My name is Heather Rodriguez, and I'm a natural fertility specialist. I work with couples who are trying to get pregnant. You can find my information and more about the work that we do at naturalfertilityinfo.com. And today's topic is going to be what not to eat for fertility. I'm going to focus on the top 5 things to focus on. So this is really important. This is what is just as important as what you are eating, is to make sure that you're avoiding these things. So, okay, so an anti-nutrient. So these are things that we consume into our body, and they are taxing, or they are possibly doing something negative to us. So I'm going to cover 5 different things that are anti-nutrients to fertility. And this pertains to anyone who's trying to get pregnant, anyone who's preparing for fertility. So the first is going to be foods that are rich in estrogenic mimicking properties. Now, this doesn't pertain to everybody in every stage of their life. These things pertain to people who are specifically trying to get pregnant. So some of these things might not affect you too badly on a regular basis, but if you're trying to get pregnant and you're doing all these things, why don't you just make sure you're avoiding some of these categories? So the first is going to be foods that are rich in estrogen mimicking compounds. So for instance, soy foods. This is something that that on one hand can actually be helpful because it mimics estrogen. It can go and it can meet with the receptor sites and block bad estrogen from coming in. But if someone is consuming too much soy, if they're doing soy powder, soy cheese, tofu, and soy's in everything. Like if you eat processed foods, it's in a lot of the seasonings and in a lot of the thickeners and things like that in food. So it's something to think about, is to reduce eating soy. So the second thing, and this is pretty big, and it's a huge topic in the health world, is GMO foods. GMO means genetically modified, or a food that's been altered to bring about a different aspect of the way that the food grows and acts. So for instance, some foods have been engineered to become resistant to bugs, or some foods have become, the sugars have been increased through genetically modifying, such as corn, because they want to make corn syrup out of it, or the protein content has been increased because they want to make feed out of it for animals. So GMOs are something to think about. I'm still on the fence on how I feel about GMOs as a whole, but I like to be cautious in the meantime. There was a study that was done, and I'm sorry if you can hear my son upstairs playing. It might be pretty loud. I'm not sure if you can hear that or not. But there was a study done. There's not long-term studies done on GMO yet because they're so new. So that's partially concerning to me as well. But as it pertains to fertility, there was a study done that was on mice, mind you, so not necessarily on humans, but over a 20-week period, the mice had impaired fertility, and then their offspring also suffered from lower fertility rates after eating the GMO corn that was produced. So that's just one study. It's just something to consider, and to know how much GMOs in our food system now. You have to think back in 2000, there was 54% of soy that was being produced was genetically modified. Now, in 2010, not now, but the numbers are probably higher by now. In 2010, 93% of soybeans were genetically modified. So that's another reason to kind of avoid some of these foods. And they're not necessarily like the soybeans you see on the shelf or the corn that you see at the grocery store. It's going to be what they're putting inside of other products. And we'll cover that here in just a second. Okay, so some foods that we consume on a daily basis that are found in things very commonly that are genetically modified. Are you ready? Canola oil. That's in every salad dressing. I have to try so hard to search out for a salad dressing that does not have canola oil, one that's based with olive oil or grapeseed oil. So all salad dressings have canola oil. High fructose corn syrup. That's one of the reasons that they've genetically modified corn, is to make it sweeter so they can make high fructose corn syrup. So just avoid items with high fructose corn syrup. There's another reason, which I'll be talking about in a minute. You should be doing that anyways. Dairy, there are some, it's not that dairy directly has been genetically modified, it's the foods that those animals are eating. And some cows have been injected with genetically modified hormones. something to think about. And then also processed foods, because they contain all of these ingredients that I just listed out. So how to avoid GMO foods? Eating organic is one of the main ways that you can do that. Also avoiding processed foods, because the corn syrup and the canola oil and things like that are going to be found in those foods. So the next fertility anti-nutrient is pesticides. So I just started talking a little bit about organic, and I know organic is more expensive. I totally get that. But it's something to consider, and it's very important, especially during fertility and pregnancy. So there's a couple different reasons for that. The pesticides that sprayed on produce have been directly linked to the decline in sperm count that our nation is experiencing. It can affect both male and female fertility. So in men, pesticides have been shown to affect, I'm going to read off this because I don't want you to miss any of these things. The male reproductive system, sperm health, mobility, count, and overall hormonal balance for men. And in women, the pesticides have been shown to disrupt fertility by affecting hormone synthesis, the production of hormones in our body, hormone receptors. They can act like, again, estrogen, and they can go in and signal to the estrogen receptor sites, I'm estrogen, and then we get too much estrogen in our system. It can also affect the central nervous system. So pesticides and herbicides are chemicals that should not only be avoided, but they directly affect fertility. So if if organic is very expensive and it's a tax on your budget, focus on a couple of things. The Dirty Dozen, you can Google it. I have it up on my website, but it's things such as strawberries, tomatoes, different foods that you're eating the skin and that are very soft and will just take in whatever's sprayed on them. And then also animal products and dairy, because those things are concentrated. So that the cows are eating genetically modified corn, and then that's being concentrated in their system. They're getting hormones and antibiotics. That's being concentrated into the fat of their system, and then we're getting their milk and their meat, and we're eating that. So animal products, very important to get organic or grass-fed, free-range, anything kind of higher up on that scale, so that you're not getting concentrated hormones in addition to everything else that you're doing, the pesticides, and this is for fertility. I understand this would be ideal if you ate like this all the time, definitely. So it's something to think about, especially if you're going through a fertility issue that is hormone affected. If it is high in estrogen, such as endometriosis, PCOS, a lot of different fertility issues are affected by estrogen balance. So that's why we talk about it so much and that it's so important. You'll always hear me, and estrogen's not bad, it's just we want everything in harmony. We want things to be balanced how they're supposed to be. There is a statistic saying that 40 to 50% of women who have infertility have endometriosis, and endometriosis is an estrogen dominant condition. The next most common fertility issue is PCOS, and that is another one that is estrogen dominant. Okay, so enough about that. So if you are concerned that you've been eating, foods that aren't organic, and these are just new things that you've just learned about right now today, something to think about is doing a cleanse. I personally would suggest the fertility cleanse. It's a gentle cleanse that's perfect for that time in your life that you're preparing for conception. You don't want to do a really heavy detox because you don't want all that out at once. But that's something to consider, and it's a good starting point for you so that you can from there start eating organic. So the next one's going to be sugar. And this one's hard because, I'm a sugaraholic. I love sweets. Are you guys sugaraholics? Do you like your chocolate, your soda, your ice cream, whatever it is that you enjoy? It generally has sugar or salt in it, but it's generally got some sugar. So something to think about with sugar consumption and fertility is that when you're eating processed sugar, it goes in your system really quickly, and then it causes a spike in your blood sugar. This causes the body to release insulin, I almost said estrogen, to release insulin to help balance the blood sugar. And so over time, if you're doing this day in and day out, your body actually becomes more resistant to the insulin, and the insulin will not have the same effect, and it won't be as effective. So that turns into insulin resistance. And insulin resistance affects fertility through hormonal imbalances. That's one of the main reasons that PCOS causes infertility. So it's a much bigger topic, something I'll cover more in the future, but sugar is kind of the beginning of all that. So avoiding processed sugar is going to be the first step, because that's the sugar that just goes into your system and you're just like, you're super sugar buzzed after you drink that soda or whatever it is that you're eating. So you want to work at keeping your blood sugar balanced throughout the day. There's a couple ways of doing that. The first is to avoid processed sugars. The second is to make sure when you're eating your meals that you always have a balanced ratio of protein and carbohydrates, so that you're not just eating a really carb-rich meal and then that's it. Also, fiber is important for blood sugar balance. So again, the whole food diet. Fiber is super important for hormonal balance because of its effect on insulin and blood sugar. So some alternatives to processed sugars: stevia. I know some people don't like stevia. It's a very strong taste, but you get used to it after a little bit. I actually really personally like it. You can use a little bit of honey, maple syrup, some things like that, like natural, a little bit slower releasing sugars. They're all still sweet sugars, but it's just something to think about. That candy bar is going to be a huge spike to your fertility. All right, so the last one is Fertility Anti-Nutrient. It's going to be plastic. Yeah, plastic's everywhere, right? I mean, I did a challenge for 30 days. I drove my husband crazy, but for 30 days, I did not purchase any new plastic. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a great experiment. And I did not realize the depth that plastic is in our lives. I had to make my pasta from scratch. I had to make my yogurt from scratch, because in order to buy those things, they would come in plastic. We were driving the people at the health food store crazy because I brought bags to put my bulk foods in, and it's everywhere. So it's not avoidable, but there are a couple things with plastic that we can't avoid. So there's two things I want you to leave with today on the plastic topic. The first is plastic water bottles, those thin, crinkly ones that you get from Costco or whatever, left in your trunk, heated up, those leach estrogens into the water. And the second is to not microwave foods in plastic. That the heat releases the plastic into your food. And again, we're getting too much estrogen from that action. So that's something to start thinking about. Don't freak out. Choose a step that's something that you can start today, and you're going to be healthier for it. Again, to recap, is GMO foods, eat organic, avoid pesticides, watch your sugar consumption, be balanced with your sugar consumption, and also avoid plastics as you can, especially the thin, cheap plastic, and don't heat it up. So I hope you guys found this helpful. You can contact me through many different channels. We have naturalfertilityinfo.com, and you can contact us through there. You can also, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can DM me if you have a question that you might be a little shy to ask, because it is I understand it's a personal topic. You can DM me through Twitter. All right, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.